remixer. I mean, known for people might know you from a long list of art bands you've been in, from like 16 Volt. You were in Chemlab at one time, right?
I was in Chemlab too, yeah.
And then, or most recent, I mean, maybe not most recently, you did a stint with Crazy Town, amongst many other projects. So how did you find your way into all these different projects? I mean, like you have quite an extensive, I guess, repertoire of people you've worked with.
It's really like, you know, some of it is just like savant luck, but like also like, so I'm originally from New York, and back in the day in New York, I was in a band called Virus 23. And
Yeah,
that's, you know, we were figuring it all out on the fly, but managed to like make a lot of noise in New York. And music runs in my family. So like playing guitar or bass or whatever, like that always was kind of second nature.
yeah,
So when Virus 23 became this thing that people were talking about in New York, then a lot of other people saw that. And that's what brought me, you know, to the attention of Chemlab. And that's how I ended up, you know, being a hired gun in Chemlab for Burnout at the Hydrogen Bar. And then through that whole, like, you know, that 90s industrial scene, I heard 16 Volt and fell in love with it. And then when I met Eric, I was just like, you know, I'd rather make a record with you than just about anybody. And
yeah,
then that's what we ended up doing. And that's what moved me out to Los Angeles. And then we did the 16 Volt thing. And when that record didn't have the commercial success that you know, we would have liked it to be capable of, but within the business, people like, you know, like the Deftones, Limp Bizkit, and Orgy and Korn, and they were all like, this is super dope. So then suddenly everybody started to think I knew what I was talking about on multiple levels beyond just being a guitar player and a sound guy and all these things. And that led me via Orgy to Crazy Town. And then I produced 2 songs for like demo cassette that they were not demo, but it was like a promotional cassette that they were releasing ahead of the album. And then those guys were like, you have to be in our band. And I was just like, you're not ready. And then eventually they kind of got their shit together. And then we did, you know, did the whole Butterfly Run and all of that. But it's just sort of like, that's why I say to like, because there's like all these kids that I mentor now that are talented, that speak the language and really want to learn. And I'm always saying to them, I'm just like, just make noise, because like noise attracts noise. And so it's the noise I made in Virus 23 that made Chemlab want to, you know, have me be a part of what they were doing. It's the noise I was making in those 2 bands that made Eric Powell want to make 16 Volt records with me. It's a noise I made in 16 Volt that made Orgy want me to work with them. Like it, when you're making noise, then people are paying attention to what you're doing, and that helps, you know, it opens up other doors and creates other opportunities.
yeah. Let's backtrack a little bit back to Virus 23. Strangely, you mentioned that because I actually unearthed my old CD. I think I bought off you on one of your tours back.
Oof, is it the one with the big logo, or it's probably that one, right? It's just called Virus 23, Virus 23, right?
The one with the white cover?
No, the white cover is Masquerade Madness. I think that's a second CD.
Okay, I have that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange that I just unearthed that the other day. So I was like, oh, I remember this. So I can't remember which tour. I can't remember where I met you at, but I have that CD from back in the day. So
I bet it was Chemlab, because it's like, well, like the great thing is like all these bands that we're talking about, everybody that's still above ground, like we're all still friends.
yeah,
And like we've all stayed in touch. And so Jared was talking in Chemlab about, you know, when I was in there, because I was just running around trying to promote Virus 23 as much as possible, graffitiing every club in the country and selling CDs. Just like when I was in Orgy, when I was doing sound for Orgy, so I was never in Orgy, but when I was doing sound for Orgy, I used to play the 16 Volt record in between the bands. Okay. And then people would be coming up going, what the hell's this? So it was like always like working multiple projects, trying to like shed light on everything. I think it's probably from Chemlab.
Yeah. So because the 90s was like this weird time where there was just, I guess, unless you're part of that little clique of what, depending on which time in the 90s you're in, whether you're talking like the early 90s with you fit into the whole Nirvana Pearl Jam thing, or I guess you're not deemed cool, or else you move on to whatever else, you sound like Green Day or Offspring, then you're not cool. But industrial music, or whatever you want to call that era, was always like this little subgenre of artists that were just kind of finding their way around the country and just kind of hustling. So was it almost like a weird, do you feel it was kind of like a weird underground movement that never quite reached, I guess, what's the thing I'm trying to say? It never quite materialized the way that people might envision it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like when it was all really on the cusp and Nails was really blowing up, like the scene had already existed.
Yeah.
And like there were clubs like the Building and the Tuesday nights at Limelight. This is just New York specific. But you had thousands of people at quote unquote industrial nights.
Yeah.
And it was like a lot of really interesting, sort of like combining electronic music with what you could do with a regular typical band. And I think what happened, like Sean Roberts, who was at TVT when we were kids, I think he's at Def Jam now. He made a joke once that I was in Virus 23, one of the coolest bands in New York, and he couldn't sign them because it was like the labels wanted, like just had like a hole or something along those lines. And I think some bands tried to offer that to them, like Sister Machine Gun early on for sure, and like Stabbing Westward still has a successful career as Stabbing Westward. But I think it just didn't fit. It's sort of like electronic dance music. It didn't fit into your typical radio format. And at that point in time, we could play shows and we could do things and make a living. I mean, even Fear Factory to me comes from that same world. They're just on the heavier side of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was fine when it was all sustainable and we had somewhat of a record industry. And of course, when we could still tour and sell merch and stuff, like you could do it. You just had to hustle.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, in a weird way, some of those bands, that sounds sort of, I guess there are some bands that have popped up that you can find here and there in the YouTube / like IGTV and maybe to some degree TikTok. I mean, there are some artists of today that weren't born yet in the 90s that have borrowed in some senses from there. Do you feel like you guys are like the YouTube crowd that came a little too soon?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, I feel like it's the job of the artist is to push things forward, right? Otherwise, then you're not really an artist. So early on, I used to feel like I was always way too early to the party, and then the world would catch up.
Yeah.
And then and then you just you grow and you keep going as an artist, and you try to shorten the trajectory of your crystal ball. Because like if I'm writing a song today, and that song is going to come out in 6 months, then it's got to be something that's right for 6 months from now, and we don't know what that is at this time.
Yeah.
But I think that we had something to do with the acceptance of that first like EDM wave that was part of that. In San Francisco and in Chicago and in New York and in these other places in Atlanta, you had these huge industrial nights that were a real thing with the real scene.
Yeah.
And like even now, like the Batcave at Bordner's on Saturday nights when we were still able to go out, that night is packed. You know what I mean? It's still like the scene still exists. I like crossing scenes over, and I felt like that scene eventually became a little insulary, and that was like at the end of 16 Volt, like I'm like not really dressing like that anymore and dressing more like like my normal like skateboarder thing. And I'm like, no, this is industrial. This is me. This is the music we make. And just, to try to expand it beyond, like a goth scene or an industrial scene kind of thing.
Yeah. The weird part is like that music, it seems like every time we kind of think like, okay, it's not cool anymore, somehow maybe for about a year or two, maybe complaining about, okay, it's sort of died down, but it never quite goes away. There's always some new band that comes in and kind of they think that they've kind of reinvented the sound, but it's almost like the same thing, but it's just with a different face that comes in. So do you think it's like the kind of music that just maybe, I don't know if it's the industry or the public or whatever, they try to get rid of it, but it just doesn't go away? Or
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because especially now where like everything's a synthesis of everything for the most part, so bleeding in elements from different things that any artist resonates with, that makes perfect sense. Like it's like I'm producing drum and bass now, but that's a byproduct of how much I love drum and bass in the 90s, when I'd be at Concrete Jungle in New York on a Monday night and there's 60 people there.
yeah.
And I was just like, and then I would bleed it into the production and just try to make it a part of these other styles of music, until now finally it's just like people want to hear it. It's just like, oh my God, you guys want to hear this? I've always been in love with this. Let's go.
Okay.
So I think that's sort of like, where a lot of that stuff progresses. Like the fact that, you can be as successful now, making certain types of music that I used to think, like drum and bass specifically in jungle music, I was just like, this is music for musicians, because it was like too complex in the polyrhythms. I thought maybe, okay, not everybody gets this, but like, this is like my entire life path. So it's not on everybody to get everything else that I get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's for me to try to create something that resonates with as many people as possible.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then I know you're talking about 16 volt. How many records did you do with 16 volt?
16. The only proper record I did. Well, no, that's not true. I did. So I did Super Cool Nothing. That's the record that Mike, Eric, and I moved out to Los Angeles together, because Eric had lived in Portland and Mike lived in I think Austin, or San Antonio, Austin. And we all decided that we needed to move to the same place if we wanted to really, really go after it. So that's when we moved to LA. Okay. So I did Super Cool Nothing with them then. And then we had some problems with an old manager who was suing us, and we were kind of stuck in a water. We couldn't do anything. That's how I eventually ended up in Crazy Town. But I played guitar on another 16 volt record, probably 5 years later or something like that. I can't remember what the album was called, but we did. Eric was in Portland, and I had the studio in LA. I did all guitars separate, and yeah, it's pretty great.
That's the most recent one you're talking about, right?
The last record. I'm not sure the last record that Eric put out. I know the last thing that I remember hearing him do, I was like blown away with how fucking good it sounded.
Yeah.
Like Eric's programming is absolutely genius, and I still love the sound of his voice. Did you ever catch that Project Ringer that him and I did together?
No, I didn't.
I'll send it to you. It's like it was, another manager put us together in a room with like Paige from Orgy and oh God, who else was there? It was like, basically his idea was to create a super group out of like all these like new metal, like, and industrial things, and make something out of it. And I was just like, okay, cool, but I don't want to make metal.
Yeah.
And so it just ended up being Eric and I, and it was kind of like, it's very indie, and it's, I still listen to it. It's just really cute. Just like, I like making music with Eric Powell. I love his voice, and it's never a battle over a direction of any given song whenever I've worked with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the last is that the last project you did with Eric, or have you done more recent stuff with him?
The last one was, I think it was right after Ringer, was one of like, I can't remember which record it was, but we did one other record where he did the whole record. I didn't write on that one. I just played the guitars, because he had done them all, just at his house, and then I played all the real guitars on it, and I just can't remember what it was called.
Okay. And then you talked about transitioning into through the Orgy camp. You got into Crazy Town, so you're their sound guy at first, right?
Well, that was on me. I got a job. I used to get this like musical director / sound guy job,
okay.
And basically, like I did this for Tommy Lee as well with Methods of Mayhem. And
Okay.
so basically Tommy had made this record, and this is the same as Crazy Town. Crazy Town had made this record, and they have no idea how they're going to translate this into a live thing to go tour. And
Okay.
that's a thing. And this is where, coming from industrial music, where you know, when I played at Limelight the first time, we were running cassette tape as backing tracks,
Oh, geez.
and then playing live instrumentation on top of it with triggers on, like, you know, like road signs and, you know, oil barrels and shit. So it's like I had a really good understanding of how to actually make it work, and then also as a sound guy, like what's really going to sound great.
Yeah.
So with you know, with Crazy Town, I came in and was just like, you know, these songs you can do totally live. These songs, it's like it's too much of a hip hop thing. Like, let the loop live, and then take all this stuff out, and then, you know, sort of build the whole thing into into a live thing that people would want to go see.
Yeah.
And it was same with Tommy Lee. It was just like, basically he ran up to me at Family Values 2 or 3 or something, and he was just like, "Oh my God, you're Kraig Tyler from 16 Volt," and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're Tommy Lee!" Right? It's hilarious. And he was like, "I got this new project. We just finished the record. I got to turn this into a live thing." He was like, "Would you help?" And I was just like, "Yeah." And so I showed up, and then it's like Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction's the drummer, Mixmaster Mike's the DJ, Chris Cheney from Jane's Now and Alanis is the bass player. And I was just like, about 10 minutes in, I heard something they were doing that I thought, we should do this differently. And I remember saying to myself, because I was like still pretty much a kid and just wearing cutoff army shorts, and, you know, I was just like, let's see if these guys really want to go do work. Yeah. And I was just like, what if? And they were like, okay. And I was just like, rad, you know, to try, you know, so that's how I ended up. And also when I was with Tommy, Crazy came out and opened for them. Yeah. And one of their guitar player couldn't play Detroit. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Detroit is like one of the most important for me from touring the States. Detroit was massively important because they were always ahead of the curve. Yeah. So like hitting in Detroit mattered to me, just like hitting in Chicago matters to me. And so I played a show with no rehearsals for them at St. Andrews in Detroit, and then went out front and did sound for Tommy afterward. And from that point forward, they were just like, you have to be in the band, you have to be in the band. And then I ended up being in the band. Okay. Yeah.
Have you done anything with Tommy since? Because I know his recent stuff kind of resembles the stuff that you were working on back then. So
I haven't done anything with Tommy since. I like last time I saw Tommy was like in an airport. Like when I stopped doing front of house and production managing for Tommy, I drove up to his house up in like Los Virgenes, like Malibu Canyons. I don't even know if he's still up there. Mm-hmm. And told him, I was like, I'm going to go join Crazy Town. And he cried. He was so sad because we had become really good friends. He's a fantastic guy. He's like a little kid. He's so sweet. And so then, you know, we went and did all these different things. I saw him in an airport probably like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but I haven't seen him since. But I would love to work with Tommy more. Tommy's a pleasure.
Yeah. Now, I was just thinking about it because the stuff he put out earlier this year kind of resembles the Methods of Mayhem stuff. So I thought maybe you could.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll come back around. Like, you know, we're allowed to go somewhere. Yeah, he was a blast. That time I was trying to get out of live sound so bad when I did that thing for Tommy, because it's like I wanted to make 16 Volt go, and I wanted to, produce and write and play. And then Tommy offered me that job, and it's like, and he took such good care of me and paid me so well. I was like, I can't turn this down. Yeah. But then that's also really basically was like the direct path to how I ended up in Crazy Town for that whole madness, and then got to tour the world, and that was pretty great.
Yeah. Now, I guess you kind of led into my next part with Crazy Town. I mean, you joined this band that I guess kind of slowly became like the biggest thing at the time with Butterfly, like you said. I mean, you went through about like 4 singles that people kind of didn't get, and then all of a sudden Butterfly just blew up. So
yeah, I mean, I knew those guys, before, because Toxic was the first single, and then Dark Side was the second single. I think Dark Side is a brilliant song. I still love that record, but neither of them hit. But then I wasn't as involved, so I don't know how hard the machine was stepping on trying to make that stuff really go. I think they knew they had a nascent hole with Butterfly, and the idea from at least Epic's point of view was to establish it as more than Butterfly by making it the third single. And I remember on the back of Billboard magazine, Columbia took out an ad, and it said that it was like however many days it had been since the release that Butterfly went number one, and it was just about trying to build like a band instead of just sell a single.
Yeah.
But then when something becomes that big, then there's just no getting away from it. Like we had another single to go after Butterfly, Black Cloud, and Jay Gordon from Orgy sings on that, and you couldn't even get to it because everyone's like, if Butterfly is number one at request on my radio station, I'm not going to stop playing it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I mean, that was pretty insane. That was when you look back at that time, I mean, it's a time when it's a night and day difference from today. Cause I mean, it's a time when there's just a lot more money flowing in the industry and people are buying records. So, I mean, what was going through your head through that whole time when you learned that Butterfly is like that big?
Well, like I remember like so we were managed by Q Prime at that time, and HM, who was our day-to-day guy, told me he was just like 140,000 people got in their cars, drove to a record store, waited in line, and bought a copy of your guys' record this week, right? Like that's like more people than we could fit into any stadium that we have out here in just 1 week. And I was like, that kind of really hit home. It was just like, wow, like you couldn't get away from it in media, and like, the whole thing was like a really crazy experience, but we never were like celebratory that much inside of it. You just see the difference of when you go to Europe the first time and no one's at your hotel rooms, and then suddenly, you come back and you can't go anywhere without everybody knowing where you are. It was really interesting to experience that whole thing. And then, in Europe, it was like way crazier than it is here. Like you're, and that was a great experience just to go tour through Europe and be in a popular band. So whatever we're doing, that's sort of like a place to be.
Yeah.
And so you get to see inside of, it would be harder to like experience all these different cultures as just a tourist.
Yeah.
Because it's like the scene could always come to us, and that was always really interesting. Like, this year I was supposed to go back and start traveling more. Like that's what I really wanted to do. I miss spending a part of the year in Europe and playing shows to, different crowds and different cultures. Hopefully if we can, get to the other side of this, we can get back to that. But I miss doing that because in Crazy Town, that's like all we did. During that whole run, we get home for like a day, and they would be like, the story. They'd be like, you got to do this photo shoot for Rolling Stone. Or we'd be like, and like, so it's like you're getting every opportunity in the world. Like it was great times. I mean, it's like we called it the hotel. I think everyone should stay in the hotel for as long as possible if you get in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many records did you end up playing on with Crazy Town?
So in the first record I don't actually play on, but I worked on B-Boy 2000 and I think Only When I'm Drunk. I think I'm pretty sure that was it. The second record we made with Howard Benson, and I was fully immersed and involved in that one. And like I was saying about like all the old like industrial music friends, like I saw Howard this year. I went and I wrote a song with Shifty for his Crazy Town X record. Came up, tracked the guitars with Mike Plitnikoff, and hung out with Howard. And it's just like we're all still friends. I've written for other artists for Howard that he was producing, like Electric Touch, and trying to think of some other things. But yeah, it's like I feel really blessed to like be able to have these experiences where we like make something with people, and then like I seem to stay in their Rolodexes.
Okay.
Which is great.
All right, cool. So
yeah.
So So, I mean, the premise of this channel is like I think I told you about. It's about music entrepreneurship, or as I call it, reinventing the hustle, which you definitely do. You're always involved in some way in music, whether you're talking the industrial thing or any sort of electronic music, or whether you're playing in a rock band or whatever it is. So, how have you found? I mean, how do you keep yourself relevant in just being hired for whatever it is that people need? And then it's like, and how have you adapted with the current times? I don't know if you've changed your tactics or how do you
I
work?
mean, I was just talking about this last week. Like, as far as adapted to the current times, the thing that's become very apparent to me. So, like, when is this? So, remember when bands were like doing GoFundMe's, right?
Yeah,
And to me, I was just like, because to me, I was raised that it's uncouth to ask people for money unless you desperately need it, right?
yeah,
So, but I'm seeing these bands that are, having their careers, being able to have careers outside of the scope of the major label system.
mhm,
And then I like really studied that for what it is. And I think what it's become as like music as a product, like obviously there's no physical sales anymore outside of like vinyl or like cassette or some niche thing. Uh, so I think what people really buy into now is the story. So
yeah,
it's like I've changed my tactics in that I allow myself to be publicly more vulnerable. I let people behind the curtain into the process because that's really what people buy into. Like
yeah.
I have a liquid giraffe, the project that I've been doing for a while, EP coming out tomorrow,
Okay.
and people are bought into the story. Like it's almost like it's more important than the music. They still love the music, but they're engaged with me as an artist for the story.
Yeah.
So that's been the real change. I mean, back in the glory days we were talking about, and I feel like Crazy Town was the end of printing money in the record industry.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, like you just did the thing. You didn't have to, like you had to promote when you came up first, like Virus 23, we were wheat pasting entire blocks of Virus 23 stuff. And that was groundwork that we were doing. But then once you get to like a Crazy Town thing, you're not, you're giving out stickers to like people you like. You're just strictly a band.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of come back around to a lot of the stuff that I had to do when I first started, because now it's like it's back to me, myself, and I. It's like I run all my socials, and I have a group of people that I collaborate with on for art and video and some collabs on music and stuff. So get a team together and get a team involved in the story. But it's interesting. It's definitely not the same as it used to be. But I think the story thing is really, really key. Like, there are people out there making great music and they're like, why doesn't anyone care? And it's just like, if people don't know your story, I, the music, even if the music explodes out of the speakers, it's still not enough. Like people,
Yeah.
there's got to be a story involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff that I know you've been involved. Hopefully, I have the timeline right. So I know you produce, you write. Obviously, you write songs for people, and then and you've done some music that you did for like syncs for TV and things like that.
Oh yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that side. I mean, where you're strictly working with other artists. I mean, I know you've had your hands in the producer world for quite some time as well. So
Well, I mean, so one of the things that I, like, building this from the ground up back when we were, kids in New York, and then going along, it's like you see how you actually make a living doing this. And I used to say, and this was even when we had a real record industry, as a artist, as a member of a band or as a band, the
mhm.
only ways you were making money was touring, merchandise, and publishing.
Yeah,
But publishing was huge because like what you can make on licensing, and those licenses, like at least the licensing that I still do to this day, it's all non-exclusive. So somebody is paying me to license my intellectual property to push a product. While they go use it to push the product, I get royalties on the spins, and I
yeah,
still get to own the record. So like, I still make I think it's about, I figured it out one day. It's like half of my living on publishing, you know, and you know, thank God that we have like the ASCAPs and the BMIs and the CSPACs of the world that look out for our performance rights around the entire you know, around the entire country. So when I'm writing for all these different people and have my own projects and doing all of this, this is all like intellectual property that's out there. And I love reading through my ASCAP statements. I'm just like, wow, they're playing the shit out of this record I forgot about in Brazil, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's super cool. But that, when I started to really get a grasp of like how the business worked, the three ways to make money, like merchant touring, that's why like the 360 deals where I was just like, no, because it's like if somebody signs a 360 deal, then somebody else owns a part of your touring, somebody else owns a part of your merchandise. You can't just go out and tour anymore on your own, because now you're working that for way less of a profit margin. Whereas like that hustle you were talking about, you know, when we were like venting it around the country in the 90s, we had dope merch, and, you know, we were able to make it work through merch and physical sales on site, and it wasn't guarantees. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I remember some years ago you had that project LAX, because I remember that was doing pretty well for a while. Are you still doing that?
I'm not doing anything with LAX anymore. That was sort of like, you know, that's sort of like the, you know, in order to make it work as an artist now, it's so much harder to be in a band right now. Like if you're not independently wealthy, like how do you make it in a band anymore?
Yeah.
Like like you have to have, someone's got to give you a cushion of like 5 years to like get it together when you can devote your life to it. But, you know, as in Liquid Giraffe, it's just me. So, you know, if somebody wants, you know, to book me for XYZ, it's a conversation that I have to only have with myself. And whatever I'm getting paid, it goes to me. So it makes it a lot more manageable. So LAX was like one of the first swings into that, about, you know, it's still short of a band, but there's, you know, there's just 3 of us. And it was just like sort of a vehicle for some of the production that Epic and I were doing at that time.
Yeah.
And it was cool. It was like also a good experiment to get, you know, sort of back into, and also like, because on the technology side of things in the studio, it's, you could have your tried true gear that you could just slay all the time, but then new things are happening and you're just like, how did they even make that sound? So you're like learning the whole time. So that project enabled, you know, Epic and I to learn a lot of interesting things.
Okay. Do you still work with Epic in any way, or?
But I just like 3 or 4 months ago, he had, because Epic's like now like doing some film scoring and like, you know, like Foley for commercial work and stuff like that. And he's still producing rap records and stuff like that. But you know, like it's that sort of adaptability. It's like you got to get your feet into like some different fields if you want to continue making a living making music. But yeah, he needed like a sort of, you know, rowdy UFC kind of song for a certain client, and I was just like, cool, what tempo? Just like when Shifty hit me up and he was just like, I need a single for this thing. I was just like, what are you looking for? And like I wrote it in like 2 hours. It's just like that stuff. I'm like, oh cool, now I got a guitar in my hand and I can sit here and slam through this and then be like, there you go. So like I love stuff like that because it's fast.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And now this Liquid Giraffe you're talking about, I know you said you're about to put out a music. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did this project come about?
Well, it's pretty interesting. So like DJing was always a thing. I learned to DJ when I was a kid back in New York. So it was a way I could get paid to be in the clubs when I didn't want to be there on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And then during the week, we could just run around and make art. That was sort of like that. And so I learned to DJ back then. I used to date a girl named Kit who had like this incredible vinyl collection, and they would go record shopping all the time. So I would just pick through her crates and show up and, you know, spin like new wave and, you know, sort of, you know, some industrial or whatever, indie, whatever. And so it was just something that I learned how to do. And then but I never was focused on it. And then in the early 2000s, I was DJing, like, you know, it was starting to become a side hustle. Like I was doing Jack Osborne's night at on the Rocks.
Okay.
And and some other like special events, but it wasn't like my focused intention. And then I played. Somebody wanted to do a drum and bass set at Burning Man at my friend camp. My friend Jay's camp, Zazen, and so I was like, yeah, I love drum and bass, and so I did it, and there were like hundreds of people there, and everybody was going crazy, and I was just like, oh my god, that's when I was just like, you people want to hear drum and bass? I was just like, I've been dying to produce some drum and bass, and so then went made that first Liquid Giraffe record, Delicate Business, and then started to really play out more and more as Liquid Giraffe. And even that, it's like it's always like a tree to other things. So from playing that, I end up opening for George Clinton in the Parliament at a Sam Adams Sam 45 launch for their new type of beer. But that's because of Liquid Giraffe, and everyone knows, like, so it's like I can DJ, I can play any kind of party. So it's sort of it's turned into this whole, like before we were, when we were still doing, like, I was booked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, almost every single weekend, just spinning records, but for different crowds and different intentions and different parties. But my favorites of those were, the warehouse and the desert and festival parties that I was doing as Liquid Giraffe, where I'm playing a great deal of my own original productions and, dub plates and flips of other things. And it's just jungle and drum and bass when I'm doing Liquid Giraffe is a way for me to manipulate so much music and do it in my own way. And thankfully people liked that I didn't sound like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like really fortunate that that's worked out for me, because I'm rewarded for, just doing what I really want to do with it. And it's pretty great. There's a bunch of people that really seem to enjoy the project. Like, no two records really sound the same. Within a record, you can tell it's all produced by the same person. It's cohesive, but it's a lot of different flavors and vibes. It feels really open-ended to me. It pretty much as an experiment in a tempo range of like 80 to 90 beats per minute. But like, I'm having a blast in it. It's great.
Okay. Before the world did you have any plans of taking this on the road or trying to play internationally? Or
yeah, I mean, that's when I was talking about wanting to travel to Europe this year. That was Liquid Giraffe based. My goal was to this year get to a profit neutral travel point in Europe, and then start to really build out some pockets in Europe where it's really well received, and then be able to make these 2-week trips that actually add to the general income, and you're getting to go be in some club in Manchester that you've never been in before. You like get inside these scenes, meet all these other people, see where that all goes, turn on different people in different countries. So that's exactly what I meant to do this year, and then this happened.
Okay. I know you do a little bit of live streaming. I know always spinning on Facebook Live. So have you taken it to some of the other platforms? Like, are you on Twitch or any of those other platforms like TikTok or anything like that yet? Or
not TikTok, because like go on with TikTok. That's like I have no. It's just not that. It's not how I want to present myself. It's too egocentric, and I've been trying to push myself more and more into the background as time goes on. It's about the story. It's about me as a person. It's about the art. But like, I'd almost rather just appear in silhouette.
Okay.
And so, but with the streaming, because right when this all happened, I was just like, we got to figure out the streaming thing right now, because this is the only way we're going to stay connected with these people and still be able to like express ourselves in this manner. And that's been pretty interesting, because now we all certainly know a lot more about producing a television show, because that's what that really is.
Yeah.
And, there was a party that I was going to start throwing before the world changed, and it was called Bass and Cats, where you would put aerial performers and fire and flow performers and put them all out front, so the lights are on them, and then have the DJs just playing great music and sort of bring those worlds together, but without it being DJ worship, with it much more being about all these incredible performers doing these insane circus things. So one of my streaming channels is based in the letter N, Cats. And me and my boy Pollinator are DJing, but the screen is all the performers on aerials, spinning fire, doing pole, doing all that, because I think that's more engaging content than somebody sitting here playing music. But even me, just like people seem to enjoy that as well, and you can get them to tap in. It's been a good way to connect with people, and early, especially early on in the pandemic, there were people that are just like, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, because it was giving some sense of normalcy, some sense that they could still, as if they're in like a warehouse in downtown LA, but now you're sitting in your house and it's far more comfortable, and this is happening on your screen in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Like when I see how some people take in streams, like they have it through their like banging home theater systems, and it's like a rave in their living room.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing. And like the Burning Man did some interesting things with setting up a whole virtual reality environment. I actually was just talking to Kate Grateful Houston from the Rockstar Librarian about they want to do a New Year's Eve one. And I was just like, yeah, sign me up. So it's like, it's another opportunity to play. It's a tougher platform to really make money on, unless you really, really take it there. And then you could have commercialized add-ons where, a sponsor will pay to have their brand associated with it, whomever that may be, Red Bull, God knows what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you experimented with any of these? I know there's a number of, I guess we call it entrepreneurs that are getting into the music tech world. They're, I guess, creating apps for like the electronic music world. Have you been approached by any of those, or have you dabbled with any of those?
I haven't, but I had a really strong idea. So like when Pandora started to become somewhat popular, like in the sort of the beginning in Pandora, I was sitting there programming different radio stations, and through inputting information and seeing what came out the other side, I acquired like an understanding for how that algorithm works.
Yeah.
And from that, I thought it through, and I was just like, if somebody paid me to lock into a studio and have access to like all the musicians I want for a year, I could definitely come up with an app that would write the song for you.
Oh, wow.
And give you all these different options, where it would be like, it starts in this key, and then it's and then you could sit there and scroll through and have it all like, played and programmed really well. Like I see that as a doable thing.
Yeah.
Which is like pretty crazy, but it's not AI because it's still coming from human beings. And then you choose what to do with the options, and then you could buy like packs of new things or whatever.
Yeah.
But I haven't, I haven't dabbled that much into it, as opposed beyond, being used as the music in different things. But it's definitely interesting to me. I think that's some interesting conversations along those lines. I could definitely see coming up at any point in time. Yeah,
because I was just thinking about it, because I've come across quite a few people that are in that space, and then they always, I'm into DJing, or I'm in electronic music, I'm into whatever EDM or whatever kind of music they're into, and that always comes up. And then I thought, what you're saying, it might be kind of an interesting. I didn't know.
The biggest thing about the new world, and if we're talking about entrepreneurship or something, it's like, find any way to get paid making the noise you want to make, or noise that you like feel like you're getting paid well enough to make, that you're like, I'll go make it. So any place where I would feel that I was getting the bang for my buck for what I was putting into it, where create like all these different new ways for people to consume music, I would always be down for it.
All right,
because
cool.
my only goal ever was to make a living making music. It's the only thing that I cared about, and it hasn't changed at all. It's just and that's the whole hustle. It's like, make a living making music for as long as you humanly can.
Hey, you're definitely doing that. I mean, you always got something going on. So
yeah.
I was just on Facebook one day. I was like, who the hell is that doing? I'm like, oh, it's Kraig. So it's like, I was trying to figure out who it was because it wasn't under your page. And I was like, okay. And then so I'm like, okay. It didn't surprise me after I figured out whose page it was. So
That's dope. That makes me really happy.
yeah. So
Yeah, because we've known each other for a long time.
yeah, definitely. So, okay. So I guess we can wind up. So anything else you want to plug that you haven't covered? Anything that's coming up that you want to plug?
It's like for streams and stuff, like you can follow Liquid Giraffe Music on Twitch. There's a Liquid Giraffe YouTube page. Instagram is liquid_giraffe. That's sort of like Instagram, even more than Facebook, is a direction, sort of like a directional portal to whatever the hell is I'm getting into at any given point in time. I put out a full length record in the spring called Peloton, and I'm putting out an EP called Homeschool. Tomorrow being that, I won't give a date, but here for the holidays. And so if you want to check it all out, there's a Liquid Giraffe SoundCloud, there's a Liquid Giraffe Bandcamp. Basically, if you type in Liquid Giraffe, you'll come across all the different platforms of all the different things that are going on in wherever you can find them online. And then it's whenever we can start doing parties again, that's how you find out about all that as well.
Okay. And then is there any other socials you want to plug that they can find you at?
Let's see, like the Facebook is Liquid Giraffe. There's two Liquid Giraffes. One's a travel agency. I'm clearly not a travel agency. So it would be the one that's music based.
Yeah.
And then people can also, like Kraig with a K Tyler, all my profiles, all my socials are public. They're not anyone can access any of them, and my posts are all public, so it's all out there. It's like, what if I meet somebody and they talk about doing any type of project and they want to get in touch with me, I always just tell them, I was just like, Liquid Giraffe, I'm not hard to find.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody needs a remix, pretty much.
And yeah, I mean a remix, your record mixed. It's like I've done, like especially in the last, last couple of years, I've mixed a lot of records, and I love mixing records. It's like one of my favorite things to do because it's just making the best out of what somebody else had come up with, and it's just like it's like a 1-to-1 to me. There's no gray area when I'm mixing records. It's so and I've been trying to push that more on some of my platforms. It's just like, yes, you all love this Liquid Giraffe thing, but at the same time, like if you need studio work or if you need you're looking for songs for your project or your television show, your like your podcast, all like that, I still do like so much random stuff like that, and I'm always looking for more because that's how I've been able to continue making a living doing it.
Yeah, maybe we can get Liquid Giraffe to fill in the blank across the world one of these
days. Would be awesome. I like the story of that a lot. Like I'd like to produce a proper hip hop record as Liquid Giraffe, because if you know me the way you know me, that's not outside. that's right in the box. Yeah. But to sort of break open some of the other boxes that people create around things with genres and scenes and stuff, that would be super dope.
Do you have any involved with like the K-pop world or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a song. I wrote a song. Let me try to get all the right people involved. It was a song I had written in English for a Nickelodeon band that they were supposed to do it, and then I think something weird happened with that band, and then when I was at Songs Publishing, they brought in someone from the K-pop world, and they were like, this big K-pop artist wants to record this song that you guys wrote for someone else, and I was just like, well, I'm down for whatever. And it was super interesting because I never met the artist. The vocals were but like I wasn't in there for I got the vocals back, and now it's all in Korean, but and the translator gets a part of your publishing in
Oh,
those
okay.
deals, because it's more than just translating the words. It's got to
Yeah.
work as a song,
Yeah.
and it's got to, so and so like, and I thought that was super cool. Like, just like the idea, like it seems we do it all the time now, but like to make records without ever seeing the other people involved. There's
Yeah.
another giant band out of Japan that I worked on their record this year on a song called Roller Skates, and Nathan Sweet, who like played on like Get Lucky, and he's like one of the greatest session bass players on planet Earth. Like they wanted me to edit Nathan's takes to like, but and I was just like, what? But actually, it made sense because the music that they make is super quantized.
Yeah.
Like that's the vibe, and so it was how do we get the feel of one of the greatest bass players on earth to work inside of this very quantized, structured way that they were creating these songs. And I wrote the line between the two of them, and it's killer. Like I can't wait to hear that record. It's like this incredibly funky bass line on this like very catchy pop song called Roller Skates. And that, yeah, I mean, I did that. I did I edited two of Nathan's parts on that record, like probably a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, like, again, and that was just like a killer opportunity to work on Nathan Sweet tracks and, solve the equation of what everybody was looking for. And it was, it's like all that stuff, super fun for me.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna reverse the thing about let's bring Liquid Giraffe to. We need to reroute you to maybe to Asia first.
That sounds great. Sign me up for that. I'm absolutely down.
And then we can revert back to Europe because you may be missing on an opportunity there. So we need to kind of take it one step at a time.
I sign me up. I'm definitely down.
All right, cool. All right, awesome.